Hi everybody, it's Laura from Green Tree, and today I'm talking about tofu. Now, tofu is something not everybody's super familiar with, but some people eat it all the time, and I don't know where your knowledge base is here, so I'm going to start with a really quick rundown of exactly what tofu is and how it's made. There are a few different kinds of tofu. They're pretty much all made from, well, by definition they're made from soybeans and from soy milk specifically. So usually you'll see it in kind of a block like this. Sometimes it comes in little boxes, and there are freeze-dried varieties as well. But all of the tofu is made from soy milk that is then coagulated, usually with some kind of mineral mixture, which is going to be either calcium or magnesium based. So it works the same way as the first part of making cheese. When you start making cheese, you put something in the milk that causes the proteins and the oils or fats to come together into little clumps. And that's the first step before there's any aging or enzymes or anything like that added. That's what tofu is. It's taking soy milk and adding those coagulants to it to clump it up and make essentially curds, soy curds, which is why you'll sometimes hear tofu referred to as bean curd. So then you can do a whole lot of different things with it once that happens. In some cases, they'll actually use an acid instead of a mineral, and you'll end up with silken tofu. This is something that has kind of a soft, slippery texture. I'll actually talk about this first. So silken tofu is the kind of tofu that you would use if you want to make pudding or some kind of a cream pie or cheesecake or a sauce. Silken tofu, I wish I could show you. You might be able to see a little bit how the surface of the box springs back when I push on it. It's almost like a gel. It's really kind of wiggly, like a flan or a jello that has some kind of dairy component added to it. It's really soft and slippery, so you can puree it up and make it super, super smooth. It's an easy way to add protein to something like a smoothie or to replace creamy dairy-based things, like I said, a pudding or a smooth, kind of like a chocolate silk pie works great with tofu. However, it's not the only thing you can do with silken tofu. There's also extra firm silken tofu. There's firm too, but most people use soft or extra firm. The extra firm is the one that you would really use if you wanted to make like an egg scramble without using eggs. You can see it is possible to slice it. They've got a nice little picture on here. And you can go ahead and stir fry this the way you would other types of tofu. But again, it's going to have a super smooth, almost custardy texture to it, which is why it works well for making scrambled eggs, because it has that kind of fluffy, silky texture that a well-cooked egg can have. Now, most of the time what you're going to see in terms of fresh tofu is going to be firm tofus. You don't see soft, fresh tofu very often. Firm is kind of where you'd start. This is something that you could actually scramble this up a bit, and it comes in a couple different types. So we've got firm sprouted and firm unsprouted. What it's made from sprouted soybeans, some people find that to be more digestible, and you'll also find it's got a little bit more protein than the plain firm tofu, but also more fat. So it depends on what you want in your diet. If you're somebody who's probably not eating any meat or animal products, the sprouted can be a good option because, like I said, you do get more protein and fat in it. If you're looking to kind of lower some of the cholesterol and fats in your diet, though, you might want to stick with the classic firm. And they're both going to be pretty low sodium, but this will be lower fat. And then we've got extra firm. I don't eat a lot of tofu, but when I do, this is kind of the one that I prefer. This has a really firm texture because more of the moisture has been pressed out of it. With these other fresh tofus, the firm, there's still a fair amount of water in it, and it's kind of springier. It's almost like, for people who do eat meat, it's sort of like the difference between raw and cooked meat. It's softer and springier, but there's a lot more water in it. This is a much denser food, the extra firm tofu. When you press on it, I mean, it's really, yeah, it's like a cooked hamburger kind of texture. It doesn't press in as much, it springs back, but this is something that you can actually cut into sticks or steaks, A lot of people will marinate these tofus, and that's something you can do with any of the tofus, but it works better with the non-silken varieties. You essentially soak them in some kind of flavorful liquid, just like you would with any kind of meat product or even a hard-boiled egg, and let that infuse into the tofu. Now, if you want something really firm with the extra firm tofu, you can go ahead, marinate this, and then slice it kind of long way. You can see this is probably about 1.5 inches to 2 inches thick, somewhere in between there. You can slice this down the middle after you've marinated it, or before if you want a stronger flavor, and get kind of 2 steaks, and you can bake those. And when you bake them, it's going to really infuse that flavor in even more intensely. And then you can use them almost the way that you would like sliced vegetables or meats on a sandwich, or you can go from there and cut it into cubes or sticks to use it as almost like something you could dip, or to toss it into a taco or a gyro as your protein filling. Finally, another thing you can do with this, my deli manager just wanted to throw this tip out there. You can take extra firm or regular firm tofu and freeze it. Cut it into blocks first, sorry, that's very important. He said cut it into cubes first and then freeze it. And when it comes out, if you fry that in a pan, you'll get a crispy brown exterior that's really hard to get with tofu otherwise. So if you cube it and then freeze it, when you cook it, you can get that crisp exterior. You can also deep fry cubed tofu, which is my favorite way to eat it. I know that's not necessarily the healthiest thing, but cubed, breaded, deep-fried tofu is actually pretty good stuff. And if you want a crumbly tofu, you can take the extra firm or the firm, freeze the whole block, and when it comes out, you can crumble it almost like feta cheese. Also, some extra liquid will usually come out during the thawing process, so it's a way to dry your tofu just a little bit more. And that's kind of my main tips. Oh, you can, so I don't know, let's see, we got a picture here. All right, so you can go ahead and use this stuff as like a taco filling or a sandwich filling, like I said, but you can also cube up your tofu and put it in soups. That's really common in something like a miso soup. We use it in our laksa soup, which is a Thai soup that we make here at the co-op. You can also chop it up and put it in casseroles. You can actually make a pretty good ricotta substitute with either firm or extra firm tofu, where you kind of press it with herbs and spices with like a potato masher, and it'll get you a very similar texture to ricotta, but with a higher protein and less cholesterol. Well, 0 cholesterol in tofu because it's not an animal product. And then finally, you can get freeze-dried tofu. So I know this is flipped around, but this is a little instant miso soup packet. And you can see in here these little tiny blocks. Let's see, I don't want this to get unfocused for you. These little tiny blocks here, that's freeze-dried tofu that's in this packet. And when you pour hot water over it, it actually ends up with a silken tofu texture. It's very savory because tofu takes on whatever flavorings you put into it, and that's true for all of these. That's why you can use it in a dessert as well as in a savory dish. But these little guys soak up the broth when you add that hot water, and you have little reconstituted tofu bits inside your soup with no extra effort. So it adds actually a fair amount of protein and nutrition to something that looks tiny. This ends up being a whole little cup of soup. So I guess those are my main hit points with tofu. Those are the different types and kind of what you can use them for. People do get really adventurous and inventive with it. If you have any suggestions you'd like to make on how you use tofu, go ahead and throw those in the comments. I'll probably post some additional recipes later as well. But there you go. Soybeans. Who knew how many things you could use them for? Hope you guys are having a happy Tuesday. Bye.